Welcome to this brief presentation about a very quick visit I did to Iceland in September 2025. It was a 3-day trip which I booked through a travel agent, and then I booked some additional tours while I was there. A very full 3 days, and it really gave me a taste of what Iceland has to offer. Certainly enough to make me want to go back, that's for sure. I departed from Edinburgh Airport on a flight at 6 a.m. in the morning, so I was up at 4, and about an hour and 40 minutes, hour and 45, we landed in Iceland at Keflavik Airport, which is about an hour and 40 minutes from the main city, Reykjavik, where I stayed. So arriving early in the morning, you've got to remember that Iceland is an hour behind us, so we arrived even earlier and set off on the bus eventually from Keflavik Airport heading towards Reykjavik into the main bus station, and then we get smaller minibuses to take us to our individual hotels. Now, as you can see, the temperature arriving early in the morning was quite cool, 8 degrees centigrade at Keflavik, and wet. But thankfully that did not last. I had 3 lovely days in Iceland where the temperature reached 17 degrees each day, quite unusual for September, and I was very lucky. It was dry virtually all of the time once I got to Reykjavik for those 3 days, so very fortunate. Iceland has had the warmest summer on record with temperatures over 20 degrees on a number of days, and in fact they've recorded their first ever mosquitoes to have arrived in Iceland. Iceland had been mosquito free. I imagine the mosquitoes will winter there because they're quite hardy, and they will have even more to deal with next year. The natural cover on a lot of the rocky lava flows is lichen. It's not, it looks like a moss, but it's not. It's actually various types of lichen. This is not land that you can till and turn into farmland. The rock is quite hard, it's very uneven, and it takes a long time for the lichen to break it down. You'll find most of the farmland in Iceland is in the valleys, which have been glaciated, and there's some glacial deposits and river deposits which make it possible to have improved pasture and the like. A few quick facts about Iceland. Everyone speaks very good English. I didn't find anyone that didn't have excellent English. It's compulsory in their primary schools, and they have to study English for several years before they then go on to study Danish. And if they go to university, they've got another 2 or 3 languages to learn, so they could show us a thing or two about learning languages. Population currently around 390,000, which is half the sheep population of around 800,000. The first permanent Viking settlement was in 874 AD, and I'll come to that later. It is a very, very active volcanic area. You know, Iceland is the land of ice and fire. 1783-84, there was the Lakia eruption, and that eruption was so massive and spewed out so much sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere that the whole climate in the northern hemisphere and in other parts around the world was impacted by it. Now in Iceland, probably 25% of the people died, not just from the eruption, but really from the famine, which they had to put up with because a lot of their agriculture was destroyed in that eruption. A lot of chemicals, fluoride and other things in the acid rain that fell from the eruption, which destroyed crops and killed off the animals because they were eating the grasses that were contaminated. Over half the livestock in the country died at that time. It wasn't just Iceland that suffered. I mean, a lot of Scandinavia suffered as well because the prevailing weather blew the material and the gases from Iceland to Norway and Sweden. And Sweden had suffered really, again, a significant drop in population from famine following that eruption. So it was an eruption that was quite significant. One thing you would notice in Iceland is that the people really understand that they are living in a very active part of the world, and that volcanic eruptions can be significant and are something to be wary of. They have drills for that, and we've had significant eruptions in recent years which have caused disruption to air traffic, but nothing on the scale of the Laki eruption. But they know it could happen again, and they have to prepare for it. So, day one, I arrived at the hotel I was staying at 8:30 in the morning, after all that travelling, bus journey and flights. This was the Foss Hotel Lind. The Foss hotels, there are lots of them in the area. This is probably one of the more basic ones, but it was perfectly adequate for my 3-day stay. It's basically a bed and breakfast hotel. It was very clean, it was tidy, it was comfortable, and the staff were wonderful. They were absolutely welcoming. In fact, I arrived, I left my luggage because the room wasn't ready, and I was invited to have breakfast, which wasn't part of the deal, but I was happy to partake, filled me up, and then I headed out for a walk around Reykjavik just to get my bearings, get an idea of where I was. Just a couple of minutes from the hotel, there's this little play park near a nursery, and the building, the low building to the left-hand side is actually a small complex of restaurants that served a variety of different type of food. And one of the evenings, because it was nice and near to the hotel, I had a really nice fish and chips and a pint of beer, which went down very well. This is just a few yards further on, looking down one of the streets again. As I said, this is quite early in the morning, so it's quite quiet. This is not in the centre of Reykjavik, it's just outside the centre. We'll get to the centre of Reykjavik shortly. Towards the centre of Reykjavik, lots of streets like this. Again, it's still quite quiet in the early morning. I walked down to the waterfront just to get the views in, and as you can see, there's some new building as I'm walking down towards the shoreline. And looking along the waterfront in Reykjavik, this is a lot of new flats that have been built in recent years, some of them still under construction, and in the distance is the Harpa Concert Hall. Reykjavik gets its name from the bay, and also from the fact when the Vikings arrived, steam was rising, volcanic steam arising from the rocks round about, and it basically means smoky bay is what Reykjavik translates as. Now the waterfront development again, another picture here, and the Harpa Concert Hall in the distance. And looking back from the direction of the Harpa Concert Hall on the waterfront development, again, you could see this sort of thing anywhere in the Western world. Lots of waterfront. You've got a nice waterfront. What are you going to do? Yes, you're going to build flats, and some very nice ones indeed. Lots of sculptures in Reykjavik, and this is just a couple along the seafront. And looking up towards the centre of the town with the Hallgrímskirkja Church, which is a very striking building at the top of the hill. And this is the Harpa Concert Hall, the picture on the right taken from the shoreline, and the picture on the left taken from the landward side looking towards the shore. Beautiful building, lots of glass and steel, and inside the building you can get an impression of that glass and steel, very light and airy. I didn't get into the concert hall because a concert was taking place at the time. They have a great varied program of music and all sorts of other productions in there. And the Icelanders are very proud of their culture and of their concert hall. Again, some more sculptures, one outside the Harpa concert hall, and the other one's a picture of an Icelandic horse sculpture. The Icelandic horses were brought to Iceland initially as beasts of burden, so they could help build the settlements. But they take a real pride in the horses. In a sense, they have been separate from the rest of the world for 1,000 years, and there's been no breeding with any other horses, so they are shorter and stockier and a hardy breed. You can export them, but they can't come back into the country. They are really so determined to keep the breed pure. This is from the Harbour Concert Hall looking over the harbour, and there are two boats there. There's on the left there's a cruise ship, mostly full of Americans stopping for the day to go on a tour, and then the other boat there is a fishery protection vessel. The two pictures on the left are again the very distinctive church. The middle one shows a sculpture of Leif Erikson, who led the Icelanders from Greenland on to North America, and the Icelandic settlements in North America have only been really studied by archaeologists in recent years. The other statue on the right is Ingolfur Aronsson, who led the first permanent settlers to Iceland. There had been visits by Vikings, by groups to Iceland in the past. That's why they knew it was there. And in fact, it's believed that there were actually some Irish monks who were in the area when the Vikings arrived to settle. So, but I think the monks must have left. They didn't mix very well with the heathen Vikings of the time. These are just some of the streets and the shops along central Reykjavik. Again, as you can see, it's still quite quiet, relatively early morning. A lot of the streets pedestrianised. A couple of pictures here. On the left is Rainbow Street. It was painted in these colours for the first Pride March in Reykjavik, and the locals liked it so much they decided to keep it. On the right is the oldest hot dog stand in Reykjavik. There are several hot dog stands, but this is the oldest, and I'm told by our guide it is the best. It seems that all the celebrities, when they visit Iceland, have to go there, so it's been visited by Justin Bieber, Beyonce, Gordon Ramsay. They've all been there, and they've all had to queue for their hot dogs, which I don't think some of them liked. But really, there were maybe half a dozen people in front of me, but you were served in no time at all. They are very, very fast. And it was delicious. Apparently, it's got a higher percentage of mutton in the hot dog than you would expect to have elsewhere in the world. But no, it was a tasty end to the food tour I went on. So, first day really was a walk round, getting to know the city of Reykjavik. It was also an opportunity to sample some of the local delicacies. I was due to go out on an evening tour to see the Northern Lights. That was cancelled because it was too cloudy at night. Just as well, because I had been up since 4 o'clock in the morning, and a couple hours in bed were actually of more use to me than anything else. So the next day was day 2, the Golden Circle tour. And this is probably the most popular tour that people who visit Iceland take. There are slight variations depending on which tour company you go to, but the main 3 sites that I'm going to show you are covered by just about everyone. For this tour, because it was included in the package that I went on, it was actually in a large single-decker bus. On day 3 I went in a minibus, which was a bit better because it stops more frequently, and also you can get to see a little bit more because they do make these additional stops. But both types of tour were great, and the guides were very knowledgeable. First stop was to visit some geysers. On the left is actually the original geyser. That's where all geysers in the world have got their name. It's an Icelandic word for these violent hot springs. You can see on the left that the chemicals that are in that volcanic water have solidified out of the water as it's spread over the rocks. So there's a lot of sulfur and other chemicals in the water, and as the spray lands, the chemicals are dropped out of the water vapor. And basically there are a number of these geysers in the area. Some erupt very regularly, and the original one probably only erupts every 3 months now, so there's a huge variation, whereas others are every 30 minutes. And just a couple of little videos to show the sort of bubbling water out of a couple of the geysers. It's like you find steam rising from rocks all over Iceland, so you get an idea that this is a very, very active volcanic area, and the Icelanders, as I said, are well aware of that. You can see some geothermal steam and water rising out of the rocks in these pictures. These are not geysers, it's just steam coming out from the rocks. The crust is really quite thin in a few areas, and geothermal power, of course, produces most of the electricity, if not all the electricity in Iceland. It's quite interesting. The water from the geothermal springs is superheated when it comes to the surface. In fact, it's too hot to put in the pipes to pipe into homes and businesses. So they actually use that excess heat to produce electricity. And once the water has got down to 80 degrees centigrade, they then pipe it free of charge into every home and every business. And it's quite interesting, the hot water in your taps is this geothermal water, and it smells of sulfur. So you get in the shower and you give yourself a hot shower, and it does have that faint sulphurous smell to it as it's washing over you, which is quite unusual. But you remember, it's free. You didn't have to heat it. The cold water comes largely from glacial melt and is very, very pure. It is very, very clean. So that they're very proud of their fresh water, and also the fact they have free hot water. This is the site of the major rift in Iceland. Iceland effectively is in more or less 2 parts. It's that part of it is the North American plate, and on the picture on the left, the sort of cliffs on the left of the picture are really towards the edge of that North American plate, and to the right of that picture, you go down into a rift valley, and then further over you will get on to the European plate. And this map shows the purple lines going through it is really where Iceland is split by a major rift valley. Now, the rift valley is where the hot magma pushes up to the surface and stretches Iceland. So Iceland grows by 2 or 3 centimeters every year, sometimes more, sometimes less. And part of Iceland is moving in the direction of North America, and part of it's moving in the direction of Europe. And obviously along this rift valley is quite a weakness, and there are quite a lot of volcanoes along that rift valley right in the centre of Iceland. This is also part of the national park, and the Althingi Rock there is where they used to hold the parliaments. They would meet for 2 weeks every summer, the Icelandic Vikings, and they would discuss things and make decisions on law. And basically people would get up onto that rock and talk to the assembled population, and then they'll make a decision about whatever they were discussing. In the year 1000, the proposal was that Iceland becomes a Christian nation. And although that wasn't universally well received, it did receive majority. So in the year 1000 AD, Iceland became a Christian nation. And looking down from the rock, you can see the large lake there. I think I've got another wider panorama of the lake. So this is all in the national park, all in this rift valley that runs through the middle of Iceland. Next trip was to the Gullfoss waterfall. Now the waterfall here, this is the board, the tourist board for the Gullfoss waterfall. It just gives people a variety of viewpoints they can go and look at the waterfall from. And I'm going to show you a few pictures of this. This is a little video. This is the gorge that leads from the waterfall. You can look at the columnar structure in the basalt lavas there on the side of the gorge, and this is looking as we're going up towards the waterfall. And this gorge is actually along a fault line. Again, there are lots of faults in Iceland because there are lots of weaknesses in the thin crust, and that's basically the gorge. And again, you can see the columnar structuring there. Looking at a couple of pictures, the one on the left is the upper falls, and the one on the right shows both the upper and lower fall. Is looking at the upper fall and looking down here to the lower falls coming up, and there is the lower fall, and it goes right into the gorge and off into the distance. So these steps in the waterfall are caused by different faults. And this is a sketch of the waterfall, and the two coloured lines show the two main faults that run through here. One which has produced the upper falls, and one which has produced not only the lower falls but also the gorge that the river then runs along. Right, that was day 2. I did end up going on the evening tour to see the Northern Lights, and didn't see them because again it was too cloudy. I shouldn't really have bothered because it was just it's quite late at night, and if you're up early in the morning it's a waste of time. And where I live in Nairn, you can actually see the northern lights from our beach here in Nairn quite often throughout the year, so I don't need to go to Iceland to see them. On day 3 I decided to do the Southern Iceland tour, again from Reykjavik, and again it's a few interesting sites along it. There are different bits that you can look at with the different tours. I went on a small minibus with about a dozen people in it, and it was very enjoyable, and stopped several times along the route, so it was good. I'm going to show you the sites that we actually stopped at. The first waterfall that we stopped at, Skógafoss waterfall, and you're going to see as the video pans down here, yes, focusing in, there's somebody videoing themselves in front of the waterfall playing a cello. There were quite a lot of people taking pictures of all sorts of descriptions of all the different waterfalls that I visited. But this is the waterfall and the young chap playing the cello. Yeah, powerful waterfall. Again, this is a little video from the top of the waterfall looking down into the river below, and that water just going right out to sea. The next stop was at Black Sand Beach, and the cave and columnar jointing here is picked out quite clearly. You can see the cave on the left, lots of columnar jointing, and then I took a close-up of the columnar jointing. Basically, this is the basalt, the lava flow. As it cools quickly, it contracts and tends to form more or less hexagonal columns as the rock cools rapidly. This is a little video of what they call a sneaker wave along here. It was quite a calm day, but every so often a wave will suddenly get an awful lot further than first anticipated if you're standing on the beach and you're unaware of it. People have been dragged in by these waves when it's been a stormier day, and unfortunately people have been killed by being dragged out to sea and getting caught in the undertow. So it's there are warning signs everywhere. It was very quiet when we were there, but it's not always that calm. And in this area from the Black Sand Beach, there are a variety of stacks on the left hand side. The Black Sand Beach is almost a little bit of a misnomer. It's a very, very fine black shingle rather than sand. And it's an area that is photographed widely. Apparently it's appeared on Game of Thrones, it's appeared in Justin Bieber's music videos, and it's also appeared in some Bollywood films as well. So they've had a lot more visitors from the Indian subcontinent since it's been shown in some of those. And the picture on the right is really just showing the cliffs behind the beach, and some of the grass is starting to creep downhill under gravity, so a little bit of soil creep is evident from that picture. Round into the next bay, we were at Vik, and this is the Vik's Black Sand Beach, and this is looking at those sea stacks from the other side, and you saw them in the previous picture looking from Black Sand Beach itself. This is looking from Vik. I decided to have my picnic down on the beach and take some pictures. The large black line stretching out to sea there is actually a volcanic dike. It's not man-made, it's straight, it's a volcanic intrusion, and there are two on this beach that mark the edges of the beach, but they have the advantage of actually breaking up the waves as they come in, and of course you avoid the sneaker waves and the undertow that you have on the other beach, on Black Sand Beach. This is a little video. This is So that's the dike there in front of those stacks. And you can see the waves are much calmer and they don't sort of sneak up the beach at you, and they are interrupted by the two dikes that actually stretch out into the sea at this point. Next stop, a glacier. Now, this is maybe not what you typically think of glaciers look like. You can see lots of black on it, and it is quite sooty. And the lagoon in front of it. The glacier here really shows that Iceland is a very active volcanic area. The black on it is the soot from various eruptions. If I go and take a look at some of the other pictures, you can see up closer, on the picture on the right, you can see the banding there, and you can actually make out layers of soot separated by layers of ice, and that shows different volcanic eruptions in the area and the amount of soot from each of them. And on the left, this is actually on the glacier. So this is the ash that's sitting on the glacier, and the glacier is melting. So yeah, it's very, very black and dark in some areas. And again, from the top of the glacier, looking down into an ice tunnel and some meltwater carving out a hole in the ice. And a little bit of video just showing that, the meltwater going in underneath the glacier, and then it goes out at the snout of the glacier out into the glacial lake in front of it. And as you can see, all that black stuff is just soot covering the ice in various places. Not something that's picked out by any boards in the area of the glacier, but some tourists noticed me taking some pictures of that rock and also the little dry valley there, and were wondering what on earth I was doing. Well, I had to explain to them that the rock is actually showing some glacial striations. That's marks made as that rock was polished by the glacier, and stones embedded under the glacier scratched the surface of it, which really indicated the direction the glacier was moving in. And the hard rock that it is a volcanic rock, but it's got lots of other volcanic rocks embedded in it, so it's like quite an explosive material that's settled there and been polished by the glacier. On the right hand side is actually an older meltwater channel when the glacier was closer than it is to this point. This is where the meltwater left the glacier and went further downstream, but now the glacier has retreated further upstream and this meltwater channel has been abandoned. And yet another waterfall. Again, this is one you can actually walk behind, but you will get pretty wet if you do that. And there was actually a Japanese couple getting their wedding photographs taken there. Not just them, but their entire wedding party went to Iceland to have the ceremony and to have their pictures taken in front of the waterfall. Something I found quite strange, because there are a lot of really spectacular waterfalls in Japan. And there's actually a picture of me on the right hand side just to prove I was there. Other things that you can see, this is one of the rivers which is almost out at sea, passing through a little town near to where the waterfall was, and this river is full of meltwater off the glaciers. You can see the glaciers in the distance, and I've got a little arrow showing where there are some power lines which are there to transmit the electricity from the geothermal power stations. A number of the farmers have moved into holiday accommodation. The holiday makers, particularly in the summer, but all year round, can outnumber the Icelandic population. There are up to 4 million visitors a year to a population of less than 400,000. So it's got progressively more popular to visit. So it's not on the scale of Spain or France or anything like that. But compared to the size of the population, it really is quite significant. It's a significant industry. And a lot of farms have diversified and have provided chalets for visitors. And this is just one farm that did that. And the last picture on the left shows some sheep on sheep pasture. And this is improved pasture. And this again is where we're in a valley, and the valley sediments from both the river and from the glacier have actually provided a soil which we can actually have pasture on, not on the hard volcanic rock. And coming to the conclusion of this short presentation, Reykjavik, like any other place in the world, has a rush hour, and this is us coming back around 5 o'clock at night and meeting the traffic going in and out of Reykjavik. I must admit I felt very at home in Iceland. I felt it was not that different from Scotland in many ways, and the people were very welcoming. So haste ye back, I would say. I would certainly like to go back sometime. And thank you for listening and watching my slides.